So today we are going to create this kind of retro Pac-Man with some audio reactive noise and kind of give this cool little feel here. So as we walk through here, you can see we're going to be using some textures and creating some shapes and adjusting some things and doing a little bit of a feedback. And then we are going to do some audio reactive things within some channel operator data, and then kind of pushing this out with some ramps and some other textures. So that is where we are going to start. And what I'm going to do is close this stuff out, and we are going to start from scratch and create a new one. And so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to double click on my mouse, left click, or if you're on your tablet, and again, I recommend using a 3-button mouse. It just makes it easier, specifically in this program. And I'm going to go to our little comp here, and I'm going to select a base. And I'm going to go into our base, and I'm going to rename this Pac-Man. And that's going to start out. So we're going to go inside this. And if you just have the mouse, again, just scroll inside. If you're on your tablet, then you just again scroll up and down, or however you have it set, but or whatever your settings are. But so I'm just going to scroll with my mouse wheel inside, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my top, which is our textures, is what we talked about in class, and I am going to select a circle. And within this circle, a couple different things. Since if you do not have the education license or commercial license or a pro license, you are limited to 1270 by 720 or 1280 by 720. So I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to do this in the same, or 1280 by 720. What do I keep saying? So I'm going to just select the same thing. So we're all on the same page here. And you can see our circle is a little on the large side. Right, so so what I really need to do is I need to change the radius of the circle, and there's a couple ways I can do that. I can left click here and then start to go down a section, and this is where I'm going to leave it as, which is at 0.2, or I could just type into this field, right? So I could type in 0.4 here, and obviously it's not a circle anymore. But I'm just going to type in 0.2 here, keep it back in the circle. And I know I'm going to need another one of these, so I'm just going to do a little copy and paste and move another one down here. So we're going to have our Pac-Man, and then we're going to have the dot that he is going to chop, right? So we're going to go in here. A couple different things I want to change is I'm going to change this color to yellow, and I'm going to change my border color to blue. And you can see within this top, we can see that we have the yellow and we have the blue, but we can't see the blue yet because our border width right here is not selected. So in this slider, you can just like pick the width that you would like to use. And I'm going to set it for right there. And then we want to kind of just frame this out a little bit, and we're going to be adjusting this later with some expressions. But I just want to kind of get a feel for it. So if I go into here, and I just happen to know in our arc angles, and if you select this, basically it's going to give you like where the arc of the circle is and like what section of it. But I happen to know, because I already made this once, I'm going to do 45, and this other one I'm going to do 320. Right, so that kind of gives me the shape of the Pac-Man that I'm looking for. So we have that. That is outstanding. We're like so close. And so now we need to do some other things, but we'll leave that right now for what that is. And we're going to work on this circle, and we are going to create a little feedback for the circle. So in the circle, obviously this circle is so huge that it would just like be the size of Pac-Man's mouth, so we wouldn't be able to eat it. So I'm going to go in here and change the radius of this circle down. So again, I'm just left clicking on my mouse. I'm bringing down the radius to a size that I would like, and I'm going to say 0.05 kind of seems like a good selection for me, right? And we'll see. You can always, that's the cool thing, is you can always adjust it, and the power of the program is all these parameters can be adjusted at any point, right? So we're going to try this, and we're going to create a little bit of a feedback loop from here. So I'm just going to take this, I'm going to add a null at the end of this. And so there's a couple of ways, again, that we can add these top operators. So right now you saw I basically went on the outlet and I right clicked on my mouse and it brought this up and it automatically connected it. So I had things that were connected. Or you can just double click on your screen, select a null, and then connect it. So many different ways. So we're going to take this and we're going to do our little feedback. So on this one, I'm going to right click on my mouse. I'm going to select feedback. And then I'm going to add a blur. And so I'm going to just now left click on my mouse. So double click, left click. And there's another thing you can do here. I choose not to do it. I don't know why, I just do. And I should do it. But if I type in this field blur, you can see that in the little search, it's only going to select whatever I type. So it's an easier way to find it. For some reason, I just like to always just look around for them. No real explanation there. But so we're going to have this, we're going to have feedback, we're going to have a blur, and then we're going to add a level. And blur is really not super necessary in this. But you'll see sometimes there's a transform at the end of this. But we'll go over some more of those things later. But so we can kind of build this out. This is kind of a great start of a feedback network, and you can rearrange these how you would like. But we'll just do it like this, and then we're going to, over here, we're going to add a composite, and you will see why in a minute. And we're going to attach this node here, and we're going to attach this node here within our little wires. And what we're going to do to create some feedback is first we need to kind of get this transforming per se. So if we go into our transform over here and we're going to select this section right here, which is your x-axis, and then this is your y-axis. So we know that we want the dot to move this way to so Pac-Man can chomp down at it, right? So if I type in an expression here, which is ABS, capital T-I-M-E, dot seconds, this is basically a little expression for absolute time. So what happened here is the dot went off the screen because the dot's going way over there. It's going unlimited. So what we have to do is we select tile, and we do our extend, and we say repeat. So basically now it's going to stay within this frame. So it's always just going to repeat, come out the end, repeat, come out the end. But you can see Pac-Man's looking this way, the dot's looking that way, so we have to rearrange it. So in our transform, in the same thing for our expression, one thing you can do with anything, because you can always do math and all this stuff, is I'm just going to do a minus in front of it, and then it's going to switch and go the other way. Right? And now you can see in our little composition right here, it is basically kind of repeating, but we haven't set up the feedback network yet, so it's kind of doesn't really know what to do. Plus this is also set to multiply. So let's do a couple things here. I'm going to take this into this feedback, and I'm just going to drag this on top here, and you can see we completely lost it, right? Because it's not showing anything, it's multiplying on itself. But if we go back to over under our selection, now you can see how the dot is just basically, it's going, and it's repeating over itself. Okay. So a couple things we can do, because if you go into this and you hit pulse, it's always going to restart. So this is where you get some of the things that we'll set up later in the class to do some different audio reactive things. And one thing you could always do is you could go into a chop, and here, let's type it this time. We type in key, and we want a keyboard in. This is going to be whatever is on your keyboard, right? So as you see, I'm pressing 1. Also have that stuff down here for help. And if I took this value, and what I always have to do, if I want to take a value and select it in here, right? So I have to hit this little plus button. And when I hit the plus button, it gives me access to this value. So in the feedback, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to drag this plus and put it over pulse. And or this value and put it over pulse, right? So anytime I hit 1 on my keyboard now, it pulses. How exciting is that, right? But we don't really need to do this in this. So, and there's a couple things that I'm going to show you, because I'm going to break the chain here. I'm going to delete this. And now we have an X over the feedback, which means this is looking for something here. And if I hit this little plus button over here, it's looking for this operator, this keyboard in K1, because that's what was before, right? But it doesn't exist anymore. So if I just right click over here or select any of this and just hit delete, then it's back to normal. Okay. So we have our thing, we have our pulse. I was just showing you a couple different things there. We can still pulse this out. But we want to now kind of change how this looks. And this is really where this level comes in. So if we go to our level and we go to, and this again is the parameters of any of these nodes. So as we select through, we can select some different things. We're going to go into the level and we're going to hit post. We're going to change our opacity to, let's say 0.9. And you can kind of see like how it's looking, what's happening here. So this is just something we have to kind of play with, right? Like, what do we want this to really look like? And, you know, what's really overall happening here? And how do we want it to look, right? And what are those different things that we're trying to do? And like, what is obviously the look? Okay. So as we go back in here, pulse this, check everything out, look into our comp, we're on over, got our transform going, got our level going, and we can see this has the dots, it's moving. We go into our level and we want to kind of have just like a little bit of, you know, this section that's happening, right? So this is all cool, right? But this is kind of not what we're looking for. So this is a feedback loop. This is something that we are creating, but what I'm going to do is I know that I'm not going to use this blur right here. So I'm going to delete this blur. And I know that this transform, I want to happen actually over here instead of right here. So I'm going to delete this transform back out. I'm going to move these things over to the level. I'm going to bring this over to my chain. And I am going to do the transform right here. So if you have a network, and this is part of the reason I'm showing this, and these are already connected, you can do one of two things. You can double click, go into transform, and bring this in here and connect the nodes. And then you can, you know, connect it this way. So you bringing this into the chain. So we're bringing this inside our chain. Or if this is connected, you can right click on your mouse over the wire and put insert operator, and you can select anything that you can actually put. So it has to be something that kind of matches or something that works with it, but I'm going to select transform here. Okay, so now we have our transform. It is going to be happening before our feedback layer, and in our transform I'm going to go over to these parameters, and the same type of thing is, and I know from before, right, that I wanted to do a minus, so I'm going to type in minus ABS. All this is undercase, right? Capital T IME dot seconds. And then we have that our transform, right? Disappeared again, just like we did before. So we got to go back into our tile. We have to do this, and we're on a repeat. So now we have what I was looking for in this is to have the little dot with a little bit of a trail, right? And so this is really where you can bring like how much of a trail is going to be in that. So I just wanted to have like this little feedback, but this is again, that's showing you what feedback is really doing as you're moving this. And this is something again that you can always adjust. And that's the cool thing of a feedback loop, right? So pulse this back out. You can see I'm pulsing the dot, so it's moving in motion. But this is kind of what I was looking for, just a little bit of a trail on that dot. And so, you know, not something too much, but just something. So let's say we do like 0.7, right? And we'll just keep it there. So just a little section. Okay. So go over here and we have this, but if you see Pac-Man is this way and this dot's going to go flying right through them, right? So if what we're doing is, and if I do a composite, which is going to bring both of these two together, right? So if I do this composite, I bring it over here, connect this node, bring this node into this, and you can see this is also adjusting it in a weird way. But I need to go into my multiply and go to over. So the dot is now going through Pac-Man, right? So pretty amazing stuff, but again, not what we're looking for. So a couple different things here. What we want to do is we have this circle, and we have, you know, all our settings are 1280 by 720. We have our smaller circle, and we're going to check our settings again, 1280 by 720. We want to create like a little mask that's basically going to blank out half of this screen. So in the Pac-Man, it's just going to adjust like part of them. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to double left click. We're going to add a constant. And in this constant, we are going to go into our comment tab up here again, and we are going to select 1280 by 720. And we are going to mask this on top of the other one, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take this node. I'm going to drag onto this line. And as you can see, what it did is it created, you know, it's basically compositing these images over each other. And because these are the same size, it is basically saying this is over this, so you can't see it. So in this constant, I'm going to go into here again, and I'm going to right click on my mouse. I'm going to insert operator, and I'm going to go under transform, because I want to take a section of this and then have it basically like in the halfway of where Pac-Man is. Like basically, so when he chomps down on the circle, then he can, you know, then you're not seeing that part, right? So we go into here, we go into our transform, and I'm going to take this scale of this, and I'm going to do 0.5, right? So 0.5 is like splitting the screen. And there's a couple different things I could do. I could do this. I could scale it down in my x-axis. Again, x and y-axis. I could leave it as it is. I could translate this, so actually push it off the screen. We are dealing with this operator right here, right? This top right operator. So if I just push this off the screen, again, like a 0.5, then it's that same type of effect, but it's on the wrong side. So all I have to do here is do minus, and then this is basically splitting right in the center of this. So I'm basically taking this constant, and it's actually sticking out over here. So it's shifted over in our translate, and this is creating like a mask, right? So it's creating something that is over something else because our composition is set to over, right? So this is all great stuff. And so what we want to do now is let's add Pac-Man into this. And I'm keeping this white for a reason right now, so you can kind of just see how this looks. So I'm just going to double click, and I'm going to add another composite. I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to put Pac-Man over here, right? And I'm going to bring this into this. And you can see what we have going here. And this is doing anytime you open up a composite, it's always going to do a multiply. So we can do it two ways. We can do this as a multiply, and we can select over. And now we're seeing it like this. Or if you don't want to go that extra step, you can always delete this back out, double click again, and select over, right? So this is doing the same thing. It's just not giving you all the options that a composite has, but it's just doing a simple task of doing it over. So it is performing the same duty, but it doesn't have a whole bunch of other things, but it also has some other stuff, right? So there are always some different ways to do things, but I'm just giving you this as your demonstration, right? So now we see this, and we can see we have the effect that we were looking for, but we also want to add a little section here. We want to take this little composite, and we are just going to change the constant color to black, right? So now we have what we're looking for. So this is, as I showed in the beginning, this is the start. This is what we're trying to achieve. But there's a thing here that's happening is we kind of want to make the mouth move, right? So as we talked about in class, and we're talking about top operators, and textures, we're going to go into a little bit of channel operators. So channel operators are what we're going to talk about next week, but we're going to kind of just start to dive into a little bit here. So we already used this little transform right here with our little expression. And so I just want to take this value actually, and I want to apply it to, as a consistent value, I just want to apply it to make the mouth move, right? So there's a couple things I can do. And this is just knowing how to do it. And this is, again, just learning how things work. But I'm going to go into the chop and I'm going to add a constant. And we're going to, first of all, name this, because it's always going to be a constant is just basically a constant value or whatever you assign to it, right? So I'm going to name this time. And in this section right here, just like we were doing it before, is I'm going to type in that same expression, right? So ABS time dot seconds. And now I have this value, and it's happening here. And I'm going to rename this constant to time, just from a housekeeping standpoint. And so now I know I have this like little time that's always this absolute time that's running, and I can do math and things inside of it. One of the things too is you'll see as we go through the course, sometimes I like to color my nodes and do some different things. So if you press C on your keyboard, it brings up this box, and I'm just going to, anytime I do certain things that I know are going to reflect into other things, I sometimes use this black color. So black is my favorite, right? So I'm just going to use this. I know that this is sitting here, and this is kind of something that I'm going to be using in multiple places over here. So it just helps you kind of just like stay organized in what you're trying to do, right? So I'm going to take this and just leave. I'll just leave my palette again. So press C to get into your palette. Also, another thing too is in your parameters. If you want to go in and out of your parameters, you can just hit P, and that will bring that screen up and down, right? Or disappear and come back, right? So this is what we have. So what we want to do is we want to make this mouse move, or the mouth move on the Pac-Man, right? So we already have these values set here for the 45 and 320, and we have this value here. But so what we want to do is we want to take these values and do some math with them. Okay, so a couple things. If you can see this time is it is just running away. It's going to keep running and just keep on going and keep on going. So I'm going to add a limit. So let me type this in. Since I talked about that before, I found limit. I'm going to type in a limit here. And in the time, I am just going to loop this. So I'm going to go into my limit here, and I'm going to loop this from 0 to 1 and normalize this. And not normalize this, just so I kind of refresh it. So it's always just going to keep going from 0 to 1. And you can do multiple things. We could use LFOs for this. We could use all different kinds of things. But this is something I just want, right? And something, I already made this once and I know it works. So so we're going to take this value and we're going to do two things. We're going to create what is called a math. And again, what I did here is on my outlet, just right-clicked, selected math. And I'm going to duplicate this. So I'm going to do the old copy and paste. So now I have two different sections, right? And I have two different values. And what's going to be great about this, as you see, is we have these different values of our arc angles from 45 into 320. But we have to set ranges for these. Because if I just took this, and I'll show you this example, and I drag this over here, it wouldn't do what we're looking for, right? Because it's such a small value that, as you can see, it's just somewhat moving this, but it's just doing it as a small part, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to delete back out of that so we don't have that. And I just hit Command Z, and we are going to set some ranges here. So in our math operator, I'm going to go to range right here. And what I want is when this time is going from 0 to 1, I want that range of the top of the Pac-Man's mouth to go to 0 to 45. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to have this, and I'm going to have this to 45, right? And to keep things clean, I am just going to add a null here. and I'm going to name this null, let's say top, right? So I know it's like the top part of Pac-Man's mouth. And I'm going to do the same thing down here. So this time I'll just double click. I'm going to select no, and we're going to do top. And then there you have it, right? So we have our two sections, right? And so we have this one that is going from 0 to 35. And if we bring that over to our circle, we are going to take this value, and how you do this and how you drag these values on here is if you hit the plus button on this little node, then we can go in here, and you can see how it starts to turn green. Is we're going to hover over this. We're going to grab this value with our mouse, hold down, and we are going to drag this over here. And what we are going to do is a chop reference. So a couple different things here. We have export chop, we have chop reference, and we have current chop value. If I do current chop value, it's going to select that value I picked at that very time. That's it, right? If I do chop export, it's going to do something, and it's going to do what we're looking for, but it's also, I like to use expressions. So I'm going to do this the same thing again, and I'm going to do chop reference, and this is basically giving me my operator, my top, my time, and other things. And you're going to see in a second why I'm going to do this, right? So now we're going to go to our second section, and we're going to go to our range of this math. And what did we say before? Like this circle was going from 0 to 45, and this is now 320. So in Mathland, we know that we want this to go the opposite way, right? So I am going to go from, instead of 0 to 1 to, if I went to 0 to 320, and here I'll just show you. So if we go to 0 to 320, and we take this same operator into our circle, we hit the plus button, we select this and put it over here, you can see what's happening, right? So it's giving this like little clock thing, but it's not doing what we want. And this is kind of the power of this nodal networking, right? We can change these parameters all we want and do some different things, but we want to go back into this math. And instead of 0 to 320, we're going to do 360 to 320. And there you go. Now we have this Pac-Man that is chomping. All right. So how cool is that? Super, super fun. And you can kind of see that because we're using absolute time, that everything is lining up where our dot with our little feedback is now going into the section of Pac-Man's mouth. Okay, so this is the Pac-Man portion of this, and what I'm going to do again here is I am going to just put an out here, and now you can see that if we scroll out of this, we can see that we have our nice little base container with Pac-Man and our little feedback dot that he's chomping on. Okay, so this is part 1, and I'm going to do part 2 where we're going to talk about the autoreactive things, and then we're going to combine these together in part 2.